in the pine trees, we hunt other than deer. The frost is white upon my skin, the air is cold, the air is thin. Run through the valley and over the hill, it's the unforgettable thrill of hunting moomin, of hunting moomin. Are heavy as well as our packs. Our eyes scan the ground, will we soon find their tracks? The frost is white upon my skin, the air is cold, the air is thin. Run through the valley and over the hill, it's the unforgettable thrill of hunting moomin. Resting in front of the fire, I soon fall into a dream. The frost is white upon my skin, the air is cold, the air is thin. Run through the valley and over the hill, it's the unforgettable thrill. The frost is white upon my skin, the air is cold, the air is thin. Run through the valley and over the hill, it's the unforgettable thrill of hunting moomin, of hunting.
Hi there guys, it's Kip and Low Bates here, the Orthoverse live stream. Sorry I had to skip last week's, but I had guests over, and so I thought it would be kinder, given that people had made the effort to travel and see me, to actually be with them than on the internet, and I think you'll hopefully agree that that's fair enough. But I'm back here again on Saturday, 9 p.m. GMT, and this week I have a couple of guests from Italy on the live stream with me. So patched in a Google Meet, and they're here waiting too. And in fact, why don't I give you guys the chance to introduce yourself? So let's pick Lorenzo first. Great, nice and succinct and short. That's excellent. And Elisa, maybe you can say something too, so people can hear your voice. Yeah, I've heard that name. It's one of the big lakes in Italy, isn't it? So, right, just off to the is it north of Rome or northeast? I can't remember now. Maybe I'm confusing it with another lake, but I certainly know the name. I think it's a popular holiday destination, and quite a fancy one too. I think English politicians go over there. Probably not anymore now that Brexit's gone through, but they used to. Right, I'm going to switch to the game screen on the stream. That's a tongue twister. So you can see people running around. That's which one of the two of you is that I can see in front of the henge? I'm standing on top of the gigantic portrait. Just going out of sight. Let's see. I'm going to jump off. I'm going to start off with a bit of a quick frivolous thing, which is to move along and look back at this pixelated artwork that I put up specially for this live stream. So clearly I'm not going to leave this here because it doesn't fit the rest of the medieval theme of the Kingdom of Vanguania. But I just thought for a week it would be fun, and I think it looks quite effective actually. I could see that if people owned CryptoPunks, I don't think there are any CryptoPunk owners who hang out in the Orthoverse, but who knows? Maybe one day we'll get famous enough, and maybe there will be people who have pixelated art NFTs and would like it to be built in here. But yeah, so that's a little frivolous introduction. And what I was going to talk about mainly today is the celestial mechanics for the Orthoverse, because I thought I'd finished it last time round, but now I definitely have. And so what we lost, let's see if I can actually, there we go, the sun's just going down, but the moon's not visible. So the moon 2 weeks ago had a lunar surface. I had it mapped a picture. Oh, there's the moon up to the top left, a crescent going down with the sun. So I'd mapped a texture of the moon surface onto it, but it turns out there's a bit of a problem with 3JS, the rendering software, and it was flickering when I tried to make the system more complicated. So we've just got a silver moon, or it's grey at the moment. It should go more silvery over time. But the other thing I've done is I've got phases, which we didn't have before. So you can see we've got a beautiful crescent moon now, and we even have eclipses, and there should be one due fairly shortly, so we should keep an eye out for that. Let me do a quick time check, time query. So the time at the moment is that big number. And looking across at my notes, yeah, so in about 10 minutes, I think, we should be having a total eclipse. So there'll be another sunrise, and then after that sunrise, there should be one. So I'll go and look at it, and hopefully I can remember to keep an eye on it. And anybody else wandering around, you'll be able to get your own view from wherever you like. So I think I'll switch over now. And Lorenzo, you were going to talk a bit about something to do with Mars, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. Okay. Right. Okay. So I've just got a message that on YouTube nobody can hear what you guys are saying. Thanks for the heads up there. I've got my desktop audio too low. Right. So that means that I was asking you to introduce yourself, Lorenzo and Elisa, and nobody heard you. I was telling these guys before we started that there are so many sliders and so many windows and things to keep track on with this live streaming that I always do something wrong. Normally, it's me coughing at the end of the session because it does dry your throat out, this talking. But this time, I very kindly cut off my guest. So, sorry guys, go through and introduce yourselves again. We'll start with Elisa this time.
Hello, hi everyone, and thank you here for inviting me. I am Elisa Romondia from Como, Italy, and I am a blockchain developer and a data scientist, and I co-founded the Volume, an open source blockchain project with Lorenzo Zaccagnini.
Right, thank you. And this time people hopefully actually got to hear that. I can now see that the desktop audio was bouncing when you were talking. So that's good. And now Lorenzo can have another go at introducing himself. I've heard it before, but the rest of you haven't. So go ahead, Lorenzo.
Okay. I think the second time will be better than the first one.
You've had practice.
Okay. I am Lorenzo Zaccagnini. I am a blockchain developer from Italy. I am the founder of the open source project, The Volume. And I'm very glad to be here today. And I hope we will discover a lot of things.
Actually, can you just tell me a little bit about The Volume? I remember having a look at it, and I have this vague memory that it's also to do with 3D spaces, but maybe I'm misremembering. So take a minute and why not give it a pitch? See what people.
Okay. We started with basically a proof of existence application. So we did a proof of existence with supply chains like olive oil and rice. And after we expanded to some experiments with the metaverse, but we connected Minecraft with the volume. So we built an autonomous city with solar panels and droids that worked on the land. So farms run by robots and droids, powered by solar panels, all on Minecraft with the computer craft mod, and all traced on blockchain with the volume.
Right, so I did remember correctly. It was the bit I saw was the metaverse part, and but what I didn't grasp at the time then is that you're basically modeling a solar-powered autonomous city and using a blockchain to keep track of all that stuff. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We tracked the power consumption and the production of the food inside this kind of city.
Right. And is it still running? Are you still working on it?
Right now it's not running, but I have the server on Minecraft that right now I run locally, but months ago it was online 24 hours every day. But,
okay. All right. So why have you taken it off? Is it just because it's an experiment and it's kind of run its course, or you sort of...
Yes.
Right.
Because it was only me in the server.
Right. Okay. I know that feeling. Whenever I'm on in the Orthoverse, I think about 70% of the time there's absolutely nobody else here, and then somebody joins and I go, hey, hello, random person, and half the time they just disappear. So it's kind of it can be a bit lonely in the metaverse. Who knows, maybe it'll change in the future. Right, so I think it's not worth me getting you to talk about your NFT that connects to the Curiosity, or rather reads data from the being transmitted back from Curiosity, the Mars rover, until after the eclipse, because we've got about 3 or 4 minutes. If I've done my calculations correctly, we have about 4 minutes, and then there should be a total eclipse. What I can talk about is the weirdness that you can see at the moment, because I imagine some of you are wondering what's going on here. So here I built this big tower, and you can see what are we looking at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's a 6 by 6 grid. That's only as far as I can see. People who were watching 2 weeks ago will remember me pointing out that you can actually see people further, which I've really got to fix because it is a little bit annoying. Now this kind of distance of rendering is fine when you're on the ground, but if you get very high up, then you start looking at what looks like a funny tabletop world. And here you can see the skybox that I'm using to create the clouds really clearly, because I just took a free one off the web. It's Creative Commons 0 license, and it had hills. And really what I would have liked is a complete cube of clouds all the way around, but I couldn't find one like that. So I'm going to have to edit this at some point, and possibly put a second skybox, except it'll be a ground box, off just in front of this one, which only has the ground, because the clouds are moving along, but an unfortunate effect is that the hills are moving along too. So you're sort of getting to look behind the curtains there by standing on top of this tower, which I built precisely to demonstrate that. It also lets people know that, you know, these things are never perfect to begin with. You tweak them and edit them, and you discover issues. And some of them are subtle bugs, and some of them are sort of odd things that you only notice over time. Now, I noticed when I was on the top tower that you could see the moon kind of creeping up towards the sun. Let me check the time, because I've got I jotted down I worked out that there should be an eclipse at 274-43743. And I can query the time. 274. So we're at 38200, and it should be at 43700, something like that. So we shouldn't be too far off. Let's see how quickly time moves. So time's funny. This is using the same kind of time system that Minecraft uses, because that's what Prismarine.js uses. And you have these things called ticks, and I think it's like 1,240 ticks, so it equals a minute. And as a result, the day is really only sort of 10 minutes long, and I purposely made night be about 5 minutes long, so with half the length of the daytime, because it gets a bit annoying walking around in the dark trying to build stuff. But we should be approaching it soon. Okay, we're not quite at 4 something yet, and while the eclipse happens, I can actually talk you through some of the amusing observations that I've made, because I have seen one before, and it was completely coincidental. I was just walking around, and suddenly it started getting dark. In fact, I think I'll head out to the henge, so we've got a nice open clear field. Henges are one of the reasons why I wanted to put in some kind of solar dynamics, because of course one of the theories behind henges is that they were Stone Age calendars or sundials used to keep track of various festival time issues. So of course, if you're going to have henges, then you need to have the opportunity to have the sun be in different places. At the moment, it does swing from about a 45-degree elevation up to a full overhead. So we've almost got something like seasons, and the days do get longer and shorter over time. But we don't. But I haven't got any of the what you have in Finland. If you go north of the Arctic Circle, you get a 1 day. If you're on the Arctic Circle, you get 1 day a year where the sun doesn't set at all. It just goes around over your head. And similarly, in the winter, you have a period where the sun never rises. And then if you go not that much further north, like just a couple of 100 kilometers, that's enough for you to actually end up with several weeks where the sun doesn't set in the summer, and about a month in the winter where the sun doesn't rise. And from what I can tell, it's thoroughly miserable. Can you imagine having 4 weeks of darkness? I'm not sure I could cope with it, to be honest, but there are people living there. And of course, the number of days expands rapidly by when you're only going a little bit north, because you've got the sort of curve of the Earth. So it's a small distance northward. Actually, takes. You saw it's the equivalent of me going up that tower. Suddenly, I can see further below the horizon. Right, there we go. You can see that the eclipse is starting. Lorenzo
We will
and
need
Elisa,
glasses.
are you watching it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, when I first set this up, I then did calculations. I worked out that there were going to be eclipses, but they were all going to happen at night when the sun was below the horizon. So then I had to flip the equations I was using to make sure they happened at day. And of course, this is exactly the way that solar eclipses happen in real life. I've seen, yeah, I have seen one. I saw one in Belgium with my father, and unfortunately it was fairly cloudy, but I did get to experience the kind of it all getting darker and the birds starting to sing, because they get confused, because they're sort of like, oh god, it's night, I'm supposed to be singing. But unfortunately I didn't see a couple of phenomena, which are I didn't get to see the corona, which is where you can the moon blocks out the sun, so that you end up being able to see the
The outline of the.
yeah. Oh, it's there we go. It's starting to get darker. So this isn't going to be a total eclipse, unfortunately, but it is getting slightly darker. What I will do in a little bit is I can actually fudge it, and I can go and find another eclipse time, and I'll set the time to that. Yeah, so when you get an eclipse, the sun does, it gets darker. If you get a partial eclipse like this, here we've got about half the sunlight cut out. Human beings, our eyes are sort of adapted to being able to see across a range of brightnesses. So when you're out in full sunlight, it's bright. But if you're in a room with at nighttime with your lights, they are nowhere near as bright as the sun, but it can feel like it is that bright. So you don't really notice the darkening until it starts getting really, really dark. Okay. So that was, well, we're almost done. We've had an eclipse. Right. Well, really, we're just waiting for the last bits of the sun to get uncovered. So maybe, Lorenzo, you'd like to talk a bit about this NFT that was retrieving, was it the data off the NASA site or ESA? Or?
Okay, it was, it's open source on GitHub, and it was an NFT experiment that used the Curiosity JSON, the Curiosity data in a JSON format. And this kind of data includes the day, but it's not like the day, it's the sol. So it's really difficult to have a temporal reference, because it's not like a date on the Earth.
Right. So so did they design a clock for Mars, or you said they're using sol time?
They use it sol time.
Right. Okay. Do you know, I was in GNSS, so satellite navigation software, for over a decade, and I've actually never read about solar time. How does that work precisely, compared to, say, UTC or GNS time, GPS time, or something like that?
It's like a universal. It's like a universal date in our system. So everywhere you are, you can have a reference with the sol time.
Right. But why wouldn't they just use like a Unix timestamp?
I guess because Unix timestamp, it's referred to Earth, and sol is more referred to, I guess, a day in a particular planet. So
right.
Sol on Mars, it's a little bit longer than on.
Okay, right. So it's not like sol is a sun time. It's you can have this time specifically for given planets.
Yes, it's like you have a time that works the same for every planet, but it's a reference to a planet. So you have a Mars sol, Jupiter sol.
Right.
And
okay. Still think it'd be easier to have a Unix timestamp. You can, apart from relativity, you kind of get a monotonic 1 second every second progression. Although I guess maybe, I suppose if you're talking about radio signals from Mars, then relativity is going to be an issue, because you could have Mars being on the opposite side of the sun, and then I don't know how long it would take for the radio signals to get from Mars to Earth, but you're going to have some delays, and then if Mars is catching up, you'll have this is an area I haven't looked into, so I'm going to have to do them. So, and you were using this data to create a dynamically updating NFT?
Yes, based on the, I'm seeing the code, because it was based on the temperature. Yes. So basically, when the temperature changed, the the
The NFT
image
changed.
changed.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. So you could have done the same for, say, your living room or the temperature outside in Italy.
Yes.
But it gives you a link to, and then when you go and check your NFT, if you refresh the metadata and therefore the image, you'd get a different image.
Yes. It's like 3 images, but it was a little experiment. With this data, we can have the maximum temperature, the minimum temperature, the pressure, and the atmospheric opacity. So,
Okay.
I guess it's updated every 30 minutes, if I'm not wrong. And
Right.
there are a lot of delays because of that kind of transmission.
Yes, and then I suppose if you've written your own custom NFT viewer, it's fine because it can immediately go and retrieve the image as you go and look at it, in the same way that when you point a web browser at a web page, you get the current status of the page. But if you were to go to, excuse me for saying the word, OpenSea, or go to somewhere like LooksRare, then you'd have to refresh the metadata to see the actual update.
Yes.
Yeah.
I tried to put it on the OpenSea marketplace, on the test marketplace, because it was never sold, and you had to refresh every time in order to see.
Yeah, we have. Well, I mean, actually, we've got one thing worse with the Orthoverse, in that the Orthoverse has dynamic NFTs, has done since the beginning, because of course when you if you get a castle for your land, let me call that up actually. Orthoverse.io. So this is the sort of associated NFT site. We thought we'd keep the metaverse side and the NFT side separate. So you can flip. Oh, that's interesting. I created my token, and we haven't actually got a very good NFT viewer yet. That's going to be coming with the avatar site, which I will get out there. It's like 95% done, but I'm trying to hook it up to the existing system and solve some problems with the Orthoverse. But the avatar site will also allow you to look at your NFTs in the same way that you can if you go to one of the marketplaces, and it'll allow you to upgrade them or transfer them out. That's sort of one of the plans there. But yeah, so an Orthoverse token, you can flip it from fantasy to science fiction. You can upgrade your castle or your spaceport, and then the associated image changes. But then when you go to somewhere like OpenSea, it'll still have the old one, if it has it at all. Because we got this weird thing in that OpenSea stopped updating our contract back in July, so that we have nearly 2,000 tokens that have been revealed, as we call it. You can think of that as minted, but the OpenSea thinks we've only got 1,100 or so, and I never got a sensible answer from them as to why that is. But there's been a load of funny stuff going on with them. The other day, a collection that I'd created for a client stopped being listed, and then when I queried OpenSea as to why they had removed the listing, turned out they had decided that it was a copy of another collection, whereas it was actually the other way around. So why they couldn't tell that the earlier collection was probably the genuine one and the later one was the copy rather than the other way around, I don't know. But fortunately I could convince them and they put it back. So there's a problem with these sites because you're not in control, right? And it can give you some advantages in that they can censor contracts and collections that are obviously scams or fraudulent, but the flip side is that you can accidentally end up getting censored yourself, and so you don't really have the choice there anymore. Anyway, so with what I'm wondering is if I can have a shot. I calculated some other eclipses of getting a total eclipse. What do you think, Lorenzo? Are you up for that?
Yes.
Yeah, because we only had a partial one, and I've got the equations for how the sun and the moon move around in the sky, and of course it's a bit it's just an approximation. For starters, it's I guess it would be orthocentric, because it's the Orthoverse is at the center of the universe, and the sun and the moon go round it. There's no point in me trying to model a view and make it heliocentric. For practical purposes, it's a lot easier for me to just have the sun and the moon moving in a circular orbit, not an elliptical one, around. And in fact, what I've even done is I've moved the center of the circle up into the air above your head, so that the sun rises earlier than it would if the orbit was centered on you, and similarly it sets later, so that makes the day a bit longer than the night. But anyway, let me go ahead and do that. So we'll try time set. Let's pick another one.
So we are at the center of the universe.
Yeah, you are about 40 units below the center of the universe, and the universe follows you around. Because this is another trick I use, is that, of course, when you're you notice when you're driving along in a car, the trees near you zip past, and the trees that are further away move slowly, and the moon or the sun seems to follow you. So in the Orthoverse, that's actually what happens, because the sun is only 900 units away, which is not very far. A unit's about a meter, and that would mean that as you walk towards the sun, you would actually get closer to it. So what I do is I add your X and Y position to it all the time. So it literally does follow you or run away from you, depending on which direction you're moving. And it's just a trick to get it to behave, because what I'm concerned about is how it appears, not any kind of real. I'm not trying to accurately model the world here. I'm trying to produce the same kind of view that you get of the world, and it's kind of an interesting mindset shift when you think about it that way. That you're trying to mimic the universe rather than model it. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes. I'm a player of Kerbal Space Program.
Mm-hmm. Right, Kerbal, yeah.
Yes, and we had this kind of problems with the early access version of the game.
Right.
So
yeah, I think my son plays that. Right, I've now used my superpowers to jump to a different eclipse time, and hopefully, I'm kind of pleased that I managed. Actually, I didn't calculate the when the eclipses would occur, because that would involve too many simultaneous equations. I did it empirically. I ran the equations with a loop feeding in the time, and then checked to see whether the angle between the sun, from the viewer to the moon and the viewer to the sun, were within 0.002 radians. And if they were, I said, right, that means an eclipse is going on. So that's the cheating way to work out. I think that's my test engineer mindset, that it's kind of, you can do things the proper way, or you can do them empirically and more quickly and more simply. And so 20 years of being in test engineering, I take the quick and simple way rather than the principled, let's solve this kind of way. Right, so this time it looks like it is going to be a total eclipse. And this will probably be the last time that I mess with time, because I want to keep it pure. Right, there we go. So here you can now see it's going to go almost completely dark. And then we get a funny artifact, which does mimic what happens during a real eclipse. So in a real eclipse, the sun is ever so slightly bigger than the moon. Usually it does fluctuate, and so you can see these little sort of dancing pixels on the left and the right at the moment. And so there's like pixel and blackness and pixel and blackness, and I happen to think they mimic a phenomenon called Bailey's beads rather nicely, which is that when the real moon goes in front of the real sun, you have craters and you have valleys and things like that on the moon, and the sun shines between them, and so you get what look like lots of little sort of spots of light encircling the darkness of the eclipse, and you get the same effect in this, but in this case it's because of pixelation rather than because of there being craters on the moon. Right, I've got a question from Professor Real asking where we are. Well, we're at the Orthoverse Henge. So if you hit H, then you'll be able to see us. Bafezriel. Right. So actually there was one thing I wanted to demonstrate to you, Lorenzo, because as a developer I think you'll find it interesting. I'm going to call up is my head going to be in the way there? It is, so I'll have to hit return a lot. So I've called up the console, the console, and the Orthoverse is rendered using the open source Prismarine.js project, and they have a GitHub and they have a whole bunch of things, and their main thing that they have made is a piece of software called Mindflayer, and it's basically allows you to produce Minecraft bots, so you can control your character on a Minecraft server automatically, and as a result it has a model of the entire Minecraft world, well, not the entire world, but it has a model of the relevant data for your character in a Minecraft world. And Mindflayer is used in Flying Squid, which is the server-side part to their offering, and in Prismarine Web Client. So Prismarine Web Client is what we're looking at now, and it's connected to Flying Squid, and both of them are running Mindflayer. And this has an interesting side effect, which is that there's an object in here called bot, console.log. Bot will show us that. There we go. And if I open it up, so there's this massive object here, and that's me in this. I can actually go and find entity, and you see there's my username, for example, and you can look up my velocity and where I'm looking and things like that. And this bot object is a Mindflayer object, and it actually, you can send commands to it because it has functions as well. Let me see if I can find one. Yeah, so here we go. There's some functions, and if you go to the Prismarine.js GitHub, you can look up the API for Mindflayer. In fact, we can search for it. Mindflayer.
And this will update the object in the client side, or even synchronize on the server side?
Well, the server is talking to the client, and they are automatically synchronizing with each other. So the server is sending stuff like, hey, a block's updated, or hey, another character has walked into view. And on the client side, it keeps track of what you're doing and sends stuff back to the server saying, I've moved a meter to the north, or I'm now looking in this direction. And because it's there as a JavaScript object, you can interact with it, and that means you can program your character to do stuff, and you can therefore write your own JavaScript scripts to control your player in the Orthoverse. So if I go and look through here, we can, where's the move? Right, so most of the stuff is not going to be relevant. But so you can query it, and you can check for things happening, and you can even sort of tell it, for example, to place a block or to move or stuff like that. I was going to see if I could come up with a quick example. Right, so for example, I should be able to do bot look and then do a yaw and a pitch. So if I go to here,
so it's like possible to have a procedural effect for creating new things.
Yes, in fact, you can find lots of sample scripts. The Prismarine guys spend a lot of time writing scripts to, for example, there's one guy doing machine learning, and he's trying to connect it up with some machine learning stuff so it can solve mazes, for example, or and I think he's actually looking at chat GPT type stuff where you can actually tell it in English what you want your character to do, and it'll then go and do it. So you could say, like, find a tree and mine 6 oak, and it'll go and do it. Of course, that takes a lot of work. But if I do look, let's see. So I should be able to. There. Did you see how where I'm looking changed? Right. So if you can change where you're looking. I'm now looking up to the sky. Then I go over and click on the wrong thing. I type bot look 0, 0, which means a pitch 0, yaw 0. And come on, what's happened to my console? There we go. So you'll see when I hit return, I'll be looking in a different direction. Bonk, there. Because now I'm looking horizontally to the north. So you could write a script that would make your character slowly look around. You could write, there's a similar command for making you move and making you stop. So you could program in you could have a script that sort of says, I want to walk like this. So if you worked out, you could even have it record where you've walked and then replay it so that you can go from one place to another on autopilot, for example.
We can create villagers like that.
Well, yes, you could turn your character into a villager. In fact, there is you can have entities in this, so you could create chickens or villagers, and they will just I think they come with their own scripts to kind of amble around in a suitable random way, but not too far away from where they're supposed to be living, so that kind of thing. And it's kind of neat because you get this for free when you use the project. That there's all sorts of opportunities for developers to hook into this. Similarly, you could rather than, like I built this where am I looking away from it? It's there. Having built this giant wizard head that looks like a CryptoPunk, you could write a script where you feed it a PNG, and it then builds a picture version of that PNG automatically by making your character jump around and place blocks. So there's like a silly, simple project you could do. So I thought I'd point that out, Lorenzo, because I thought as a developer you'd find that interesting. That you can actually, and the main thing to do is to go and look. So there's the MindFlayer API, and then I think they've got a whole bunch of examples even. Let's see. MindFlayer examples. So some of them are not going to be relevant to the Orthoverse. Let's have a look at Jumper. That might be. So you've got one where it can. There we are. Bot control, set control state. That was the one I was looking for. So if I copy that and paste it in, I should now just start moving forward automatically when I hit enter. And there we go. And then I'll hit a wall. Hop. Now glide sideways.
I think that we can even use Python packages or in the Python version, and we can use the data science and AI packages of Python, like PyTorch and things like that. Use machine learning inside Minecraft or words like that.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
And of course what you've got here is you've got a sort of safe contained world where you can test stuff out that you could go and build a robot and put it in a lab with blocks lying around, but it's a lot easier to have a simulated world, and it's a bit cleaner, and still solve problems. So I think there's a sort of a lot of opportunity for that and these kind of things. Except that unfortunately I don't have time to write clever scripts for my character to be able to walk around and do stuff automatically, because of course I've got to fix the actual world itself. It's as the creator of the world, I don't have the time to actually sit back and relax by some lakeside or seaside, or write a script to automatically go to a particular location. What I need to do is focus on getting the avatar generator stuff hooked up and actually having the world update dynamically. And I'm nearly there with that, by the way. So at the moment, I have to manually scrape all the tokens, then restart the server in order to pick up the changes that have happened. If someone's transferred a token or bought a token, they don't appear in the world until I do that. And Richard has provided the database backend now, and we've got the scraper working that updates the database. Excuse me. Now I need this part, the world that we're looking at, to actually go to the database, because at the moment it just uses a text file. I did the usual developer thing of, well, let's pretend there's a database, but I'll actually just load a text file which has all the data, and then I never got round to doing it dynamically.
It's not very efficient to use a text file, because on a real database you can use parallel things and it will be really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you got really big data on it, it will be easier to manage.
Yeah, it's that sort of technical debt problem thing where you have a short-term goal and a long-term goal, and of course you're always working towards the short-term goals. So you make decisions which will get you to a short-term goal quicker, but it actually ends up taking you longer to therefore achieve the long-term goal. And of course, when I started this, I had no idea it would end up getting this complex and convoluted. I mean, Richard and I started off with NFT collection, and then we tacked on we thought, well, land is really popular at the moment, so we'll just make them look like they're land tokens. And then I kind of said to him a week later, well, if these tokens look like they are land, then maybe there should be a representation of them in a 3D virtual world. And it all just kind of snowballed from there. And so now I wake up a year later and there's this actual virtual world representing them. It wasn't planned from the start to be like this. It's just the tale has grown in the telling, I think, is the way to put it.
For me, it's one of the most interesting projects, because I saw this project growing from day one, and I'm really positive about it. I was positive about sandbots, but I tried to use sandbots, and even if they have a big team behind, there is nothing to do inside sandbots.
Yeah, I bought a sandbox land, and then and was waiting for the virtual world to arrive, and then and I thought, because I've got a land token, of course I'll be allowed to join in with the alpha. And then it turned out that no, owning a land token did not give you access to the alpha. They had these alpha passes that they were selling. And I think for me that was the turning point with the sandbox, was, I'm an original token holder and you're making me pay to go into the alpha. That just came across as well, it reminds me a bit, for example, of the airline Ryanair, where they were talking about charging passengers to use the toilet, right? You think, I bought a plane ticket, now you're charging me to get a drink of water, and you're charging me to use the toilet? Seriously? I mean, how much money do you want to squeeze out of me? It's yeah.
And the alpha passes are really expensive.
Yeah, they weren't cheap. And but of course you could always enter the lottery to see if you could get one. But I think the key thing there is that you've got the fundamental token already, right? It's the land token. That, to me, should be the core token for the project, because after all, it's all about virtual land. And yet I really do not see any kind of regard for land token holders. So they've kind of said, you've spent a fortune on this, but we don't really care. That to me sort of misses the point of all of this. Because, what if I was to release an NFT for every block in this world and charge people? So it's like, you want to build a fantastic pixelated picture of your own face? Well, you can go and buy 256 blocks, and I'm going to charge you 10 cents each for them. It just starts getting like those free-to-play games where they make some of the things virtually impossible to complete without spending money. And I just feel that's wrong.
Yes.
So, and Sandbox also seems to be very, very focused on PR and marketing, and less so on the actual technology behind it, which, as a technologist, I also find disappointing. I don't. Do you know if you can actually build your Sandbox world inside the world yet, or do you still have to use the tool to build it and then upload it?
You have to use an external software, I guess, the builder, the Sandbox builder. You have to buy, I guess, Mana. No, Mana, it's the central.
It's
sand token to use blocks, because I think every block you need the fungible token in order to consume those kind of blocks. So if you build a bigger building, you will need more token, or more sand token in order to do it. So.
Okay, so they're doing exactly what I said I wouldn't do for the Orthoverse, which is charge people to build stuff. Again, that just strikes me as greedy, right? It's that there's, in the real world, we charge for land because it's a scarce resource that's desirable, and if you're going to build a house, then you should own the land that it's built on. And we charge for bricks because there is a cost associated with generating a brick or a window or a door, right? These things are not, somebody has to use resources to create them for you to then stack them one on top of each other to build a house. But in the virtual world, there's no cost. It doesn't cost me anything to create a block for you. It's the same cost. The server costs are the same regardless of whether you build or not. So why should I, therefore, if I'm going to charge you for it, I'm using it as a mechanism to extract money from you. And then it's kind of, you could say that's our business model. But there comes a point where you start, as I said, it starts getting like Ryanair. It's like every single opportunity that is available for me to extract money from you, I will take. I don't really think that's a viable long-term commercial relationship, because it just means that I'm treating you as a cash cow. And I think this is a problem we have with a lot of these tech companies, because that's how they see us, right? And it's slowly dawning on people what the full implications are of being a product of Facebook, for example, where it's all about how much they can get from us. Because, yes, it's a business transaction. Fundamentally, you're going to expect to make a profit, but it's very short-sighted to do it purely on how much I can get from you now. And it reminds me a bit of that psychology experiment where they determine how good a particular individual is at deferred gratification. You may have heard it, where you put a kid in a room and you tell them, and you put a marshmallow in front of them on a plate, and you tell them that you're just going out for a few minutes. Don't take the marshmallow, because if it's still here when I get back, I'll give you 5 of more. And then you just leave them and see how long it takes until they eat the marshmallow. And some kids will gobble it up immediately, and some kids will sit there patiently staring at it, wishing they could eat it, but managing to hold off doing it. And it actually correlates well with how as a grown-up, how you take long-term views of things. So people who do well on that test as a kid are more likely to have savings, are more likely to have long-term career goals, and actually generally end up being more successful. Not always, but generally speaking. And companies remind me of the kid who gobbles up the marshmallow immediately. So these kind of things, if you look at the Facebooks and unfortunately the Sandboxes of the world, they approach all this stuff like the kid who just has to immediately gobble down the marshmallow. They can't think in terms of, let's have a meaningful, longer relationship because it's going to be more valuable to both of us. But that's what it is. So actually, I didn't check with you, Lorenzo. Do you, because I just went off on a rant there, do you have a sand token too, or a sand land token, or?
No, I don't have anything with Sandbox, but I have. I'm renting land on Decentraland. Yes.
Right. Okay.
I'm trying to do some experiments on Decentraland. because it's very cheap. I'm not doing a promotional video about the central, but with the crypto winter right now, it's very cheap to rent lands in the central.
Oh, okay. So this is the time to do it. Can you lock them in for 10 years on the cheap?
I guess the maximum is like 1 year. 1 year to rent them.
Right. Okay. And can you resell? Are you like do the equivalent of subletting?
No, I don't think you can sublet land, but you can rent a land, upload your scene, and do what you want to do on that land for the time that you have rented the land, and after the land will be emptied, will be cleaned, and the new user will put another scene.
Put their stuff there, right? Okay. Hey, can't you do it in the Orthoverse?
It would be great.
All right. Do you have an Orthoverse land?
Yes, everyone.
Okay, let me
Everyone have an Orthoverse land, but I did not reveal it.
Oh, you haven't revealed it yet?
No.
Oh, shame on you, shame on you. I was going to
I
say we
will
can
do
go
it.
and visit it. I mean, it's at the moment. Can I find an easy, quick way of? Well, and its gas has gone up slightly, but it'll cost you 3 or 4 euros worth of ether at the moment to reveal it. So I mean, it is seriously the cheapest. I think it's probably the cheapest land token out there. I am disappointed, Lorenzo. I really am.
I know.
I'll be fine. Just make sure after this live stream you immediately go off and reveal it, because
I will reveal my
right.
land.
Because I can see here now we have 1,936. If that's not 1,937 by the end of tomorrow, I shall have stern words with you, sir.
Okay. Okay.
Anyway. It's interesting that actually what I should be doing here is, rather than chastising you, which I hope you understand I'm doing humorously, I'm not actually genuinely offended, is I should actually ask you, why haven't you? Right? That is the proper business approach to take. Is we've got an opportunity here to find out what stopped you from revealing it, or what failed to compel you to reveal the token. Do you have any idea?
Procrastination.
Right. So it was just kind of, was it something that you were thinking along, oh, I really should do that, and then you just forgot?
Yes.
And can you think of something that might have actually spurred you to do it? Something that would have encouraged you to do it, other than me now threatening you live on a live stream?
I don't think anything will. I guess it's only about me that I procrastinate this thing a lot, really many times, because I always say that I need to reveal this kind of NFT. I want to see how it will be in the 3D world. But maybe one thing is that I followed more the post and the content more than the Orthoverse, because I didn't not join before the Orthoverse, so I guess it was about that. So I was more like following the project from the outside.
Yeah.
But when you leave it on the inside, you will get the urgency to see your land.
Okay. Kind of makes sense to me. I mean, we were trying to kind of have something. We were trying to think of ways to encourage people to actually reveal their token, and so we came up, for example, with the fact that the sooner you reveal it, the more likely you are to be near the center of one of the henges. Although in hindsight, that's not going to be so important, because we're going to add the opportunity for you to be able to teleport to your land, but other people won't be able to. So that does mean that if you've got a land close to a henge, people will be able to get to it quicker.
I guess
right, so
one thing that will motivate people is to do community events on that kind of lands. So if someone wants to do something, on the live stream, we can organize an event on that kind of land, so he will reveal that land to everyone for the first time.
Right. Okay, so you're thinking sort of like throw a block party on...
Yes.
Right. Actually, it'd literally be a block party in this, wouldn't it? Because it's a voxel world.
It's a voxel party.
Yeah, a voxel party. So, right. But yeah, so if you were to reveal your token tonight, it'll end up, for example, it might end up in that spot. Whereas if you'd done it at the very beginning, then, you know, you could have ended up with this one, for example. And which is right next door. And actually, strangely enough, I forgot to reveal tokens for myself early on. I was so wrapped up with getting this all working that I didn't go and grab any. My first reveal token that was placed on the map was somewhere around here. I'm putting it, it's not Nasma really, but I can't remember the exact name now, but it was about 2 or 3 tiles out. And I was kicking myself, but I had to stick to the promise of how these things are locked down on the map. And then, much to my delight, somebody put Fang Wanina up for sale. So I actually bought, I think I paid 0.1 ETH for it. I actually bought my own, bought an Orthoverse token off somebody else because it had a better location than any of mine, and I wanted to be right next to the henge. And I think it's probably not the greatest advert for me being competent, but at least it's a good advert for me being honest and playing by the same rules as everybody else. But, and who knows, maybe the Orthoverse will become a roaring success. It probably won't because it's doomed, but maybe it'll become a roaring success, and then the person who sold me this little gem will look back at it and think, well, that was the most ridiculous decision I ever made in crypto. Right, I think we're coming up to midnight here at Finland. But before I sign off, I would just like to say a big thank you to Elisa and to Lorenzo for joining me here. And I hope you guys have had a good time. And so I guess I'll give you the opportunity to say goodbye too, and then I'll be shutting down the live stream. So
Okay. I would say goodbye to everyone, and the next time I will invite you into my Orthoverse home.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I pass over to Elisa.
Okay.
Thank you for having us, and hi to all. And it was a pleasure. And I really loved the lights, the full light type moment.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you once again for joining me. Thank you everybody who has tuned in, and anybody who is watching this later when it's actually uploaded onto YouTube proper. I've had a great time, and hopefully I'll see you all this time, or rather an hour earlier than this time next week, when I should be having the 9th Orthoverse live stream. And that's it. I'll